Hello, hello, and welcome. This is week two, part two for breaking the mental health stigma. If you were with us last week, you already know you're in for a great conversation. If you're just joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We welcome you. I am Dr. Pamela Ellis, and I am joined today by Dr. Karen Townsend, my sister friend. We have been accountability partners for what, 5 years now?
Yes,
Yeah,
we just had our
absolutely.
anniversary.
We sure did. And we had our anniversary in person, which was nice because I don't think we have seen each other before then.
Nope, it was a
Nope.
long,
Yeah.
long break.
A long break. Yeah. We started right at the beginning of COVID.
Mhm.
And yeah, just been talking on the phone every morning, praying together, keeping each other accountable in life and in business. So that's been an amazing journey, Dr. Karen.
I feel blessed to
Yeah.
have you in my life. So,
Oh,
for
thank
people who
you.
don't know you personally, you have such a positive light and
Oh,
always
yes,
smiling.
I am. I'm always smiling, and you can hear it in my voice when we talk in the morning.
Mhm.
Yes, well, thank you for that. Same here for sure. So, here's what we're going to do. So, we're talking about breaking the mental health stigma. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I really wanted to bring this series and have these conversations because even though, we often have heard about mental health being stigmatized over the years, and during COVID, there was a lot more openness to mental. We still have those pockets in our society where there's a stigma attached to it. And I really do want to do whatever I can to break that stigma. And Dr. Karen, I wanted you to be part of the conversation because we've had so many conversations about so many different things. And mental health has been one of those conversations that we've had. And so, you were with us last week, joined in the audience. And I know that, even before we met today, you came with something that I think is a great start to our conversation. So if you don't mind just sharing that with our audience.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for the invitation. And I think it's a
Hmm.
very important conversation for women, for
Yes,
moms, for professionals, for
yes,
high achievers, because so often, if you are
yes,
at the top of your game professionally, it's a wonderful thing, but also it can be lots of pressure because of the expectations people have of
yes,
you and for you. So, someone
yeah.
sent this to me, and I just thought it might be interesting to your
Hmm.
audience. So, I'd like to read it. They call us strong, but what they really mean is you can survive anything, so we'll give you everything. The
Mm.
strong label is a trap, a petty little prison. We're expected to be unshakable, to carry the weight of the team, to smile while breaking, to hold everybody down while no one holds us up. And then when we crumble, they say we're burnt out, like it's a
Mm.
condition we caught, not a system that was built. But guess what? I am not your mule. I am not your martyr, and I'm done being the solution. I
Mm.
invite you to take off your cape, to say no, to let the ball drop, to let someone else go above and beyond, because we need to rest. We are not superheroes, and we're tired of acting that way. We're not proving anything to anyone. We're
Mm.
reclaiming our breath, our
Yeah.
stillness, our softness. And that, my love, is power. I can't take credit for this. This was sent to me by Ngozi, who is the co creator of the Black Women's Rest Revolution. But
Wow.
she sent it to me, and I sent it to so many other women because
Mm.
I do think we feel challenged to be all things for all people all the
Yeah,
time. And
we
that's an
do.
unrealistic expectation.
It really is. It really is. And, when you were reading that, I felt like, yeah, that's kind of perhaps easier for us to do as entrepreneurs. But I think about, our sisters who are in corporate, you
Mhm.
know, can they really take that liberty sometimes to rest or to say, I'm not going above and beyond today? What do you think
Well,
about that? Because you work with a lot of women in corporate. I used to, I'm not doing it anymore.
I think for women in corporate, especially the ones at the highest levels, they feel double pressure.
Yeah.
I'm in this very important position, but if I'm
Mhm.
the only one or one of a few in, let's say, the C-suite,
Yeah.
if it doesn't go well, it's not just
Mhm.
it didn't go well for Karen. It's now this becomes the yardstick by which we measure
Yes.
all women. So
Right.
that's an added pressure. But as it relates to pulling back or tapping
Mhm.
out or taking some time, I think that men in corporate have figured out a way to do that and call it business. Okay. We'll go play golf today. It's sunny.
Yeah.
So we step
Yeah.
away and we're gone for half the day, the whole day, and nobody raises an eyebrow. But
Yeah.
I don't think women in organizations have that same luxury. I remember I have a client and he invited me out for networking, and he
Mhm.
said, "Well, where would you like to go?" And I said, "I would love to go get a pedicure."
And I'm thinking, I'm sure he must have been like interested.
He said, I can't take you to get a pedicure. I can't expense that. And I said, if I told you I wanted to play golf, could we go play golf? And he said, yeah. I said, well, I don't play golf. We can put our feet in the pedicure bowl and we can talk about business and it'll be great. And, of course, that was a paradigm shift. Um,
Yes.
and it didn't happen. But what about that? What about that?
Yeah. Yeah, what about that?
But the
For our
right
audience who's watching us and listening in, I'd love for you to just type in, chat, just what about that?
So, I mean, when we're talking
Yeah.
about mental health and what it takes for
Mhm.
me to feel
Yeah,
healthy and balanced and whole,
right.
the way it looks for me may not be the way it looks for someone else. But does that mean my way is less than?
Yeah, that's true. And, I'm with you on that in terms of, being able to take care of ourselves in a way that's meaningful for
Mhm,
us and not feeling like we have to do it any one way.
mhm,
Now, I think too that, for many of us, we need to sometimes think about what are those other ways that we can care for our mental health.
mhm,
And it's not worried about it being any one particular way. Because I think it's something that we can do even more regularly.
mhm,
And like one of the things that comes to mind for me is, having a gratitude practice as a way to take care of yourself mentally, or spending some quiet time just breathing or being mindful, and any type of mindful practice. And it can be done with an app. And that's something that you can do daily, whereas going to see your therapist might be on a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
mhm.
And so there's all of these things that we can do to care for ourselves. And like you mentioned, doing that pedicure, which is, a form of self-care that does support you mentally, I believe.
Well, I think even taking the time to ask ourselves the question,
Hmm.
what brings you joy?
Yeah.
And some people are very challenged to answer that question. And again, I think it goes back to us always functioning in the role of
Hmm.
corporate leader, business owner, mom, daughter, wife.
Hmm.
And we have to be intentional about determining what it is that
Yes.
brings us joy. And then the follow up question to that is,
Yeah.
if this is what brings you joy, how often do you do it? Or when was the last
Mhm.
time you've done it? And I posed that question to a group of women leaders once, and
Huh?
the participant was so excited to say, I love to dance. I love to dance. That brings me great
Yeah.
joy. And I said, well, when was the last time you went dancing? She said it had been 10 years.
10 years. Oh my goodness.
10 years.
Hey, Dr. Carter, I saw you say hello and wanted to acknowledge you. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I don't think we even realize sometimes how long it's been. I would say for myself, probably the last wedding, you know, as much as I like to dance, it's like usually only at a wedding. So, yeah,
So
wow.
what brings you joy, Dr. Pamela?
Oh, running.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I try to do that 4 times a week. So yes, and I plan it out almost religiously every, Saturday, Sunday evening. I am writing out when am I going to run this week, and for me, it's mental and it's physical as well. And so, thank you, Dr. Carter, and it brings me a great deal of joy. And what I really love about it too is that I can do it whenever and have a sense of control with it. And what I mean by that is I don't have to wait for anybody else in
Hmm.
order to do it. And there are times that, yeah, I would enjoy running with someone else or running with the group. But I mean, I run at, 6 a.m., as you know. So doing that with the group, oftentimes it'll be much later and you have to wait for other people's schedules. And so yeah, it brings me joy and I just love it. What about for you?
I like being outside.
Hmm.
Um, and I had to actually apologize to God about 6 months ago
Yeah.
because I am blessed to have this beautiful, serene space in my
Mhm.
backyard. The river runs behind my house, and
Yeah.
I had not been going out there to look and listen and smell. So
Hmm.
part of what I do when I go out is with a cup of
Yeah.
tea, and I practice mindfulness. What are
Yeah.
5 things you see? What are 4 things you hear? What are 3 things you can smell, touch, and
Hmm.
taste? And that helps to center me. And I
Yeah.
find the mornings that I do that, my
Uh-huh.
days go much better. So that
Yeah.
brings me joy.
Yeah. Dr. Carter, tell us in the chat what brings you joy. I'd love to know. Um, yeah. And I mean, that's something really simple. And the fact that you have that river right in your backyard, you can take advantage of it anytime.
Mhm.
It's always there. It's always there. And for any of our other listeners, I would love for you to just type in the chat, what brings you joy. Um, because there's, it's probably something very simple that can take care of you and nourish your spirit in ways that you may take for granted, is
Mhm.
what I would say. So, yeah, absolutely. Um, Over the years, Dr. Karen, one of the things, I've wondered about, and I don't think we've talked about is what is it that has been maybe a defining moment or something that's led to you um, valuing your mental health?
I believe it was experiencing what I think was, if not a full blown nervous breakdown, something very close. Um, Years ago, my husband had a project out of town, so he was traveling quite a bit. Monday through Friday, he would be away.
Hmm.
And I had 2 little ones at the time. Um, Also, my grandmother was gravely ill and in the process of making her transition. My
Hmm.
husband's grandmother was also very ill. My youngest daughter had
Mhm.
been diagnosed with a blood disorder. So there were all these
Wow.
things going
Yeah.
on at the same time. And I
Mhm.
remember going to church.
Mm.
And that
Mhm.
particular Sunday, my pastor was preaching about what it meant to be a good parent.
Yeah.
And we sat in the balcony where everybody
Mhm.
sat with little children because they can be disruptive. And he
Yeah.
looked up in the balcony and he said, and Sister Townsend is such a great mom. And she
Mhm.
prays with those girls every day on the way to school, which I did because I'd shared that with him.
Uh-huh.
And he just went on and on and on. And Dr. Pamela, I just started to weep. And the
Mm.
more he talked, the more I wept. The more he talked, the more
Yeah.
I wept. And anyone who has ever gone to a Black Baptist church, if someone is weeping,
Yes.
people assume you have the Holy Spirit.
Uh.
So, so my mother-in-law was sitting next to me and she was just rubbing my back. It's okay, baby. Let the Lord use you. It's all right. She what she didn't recognize is I was really at my breaking point.
Yeah.
And I left
Mhm.
church that day and I called my two best friends and I said, I need you to come to my house because if you
Yeah.
don't come, I'm gonna throw myself in front of a truck. And in
Mm.
that moment, I was in the depths of what I am sure was undiagnosed depression.
Yeah.
And that is what led me for the first time to seek out a
Mm.
therapist. And
Yeah.
I believe so often in our community, in the African American community,
Yeah.
we haven't always been open to
Mhm.
therapy.
That's
Um,
true.
I think as people of faith, we've been
Yeah.
taught to
Mhm.
pray,
Yeah.
but I'm at a point in my life where I need Jesus and I need a therapist.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
and
true.
I was hesitant to
Mhm.
talk about that publicly for a really long time, but
Yeah.
I realized that sometimes
Mhm.
when we have the courage to tell our truth, it
Yeah.
gives other people permission to tell theirs, and then they
Yeah.
realize they're not alone. They're
Mm.
not alone. So I'm at the point where I've really made it because I have a therapist. That's the sign.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's really a powerful story. And thank you so much for sharing it. I think that, yes, oftentimes, in our community, it is, almost even shunned,
Mhm.
to have a therapist. And I think, you may recall, and some of our listeners who were with us last week may recall me sharing my story. And for those of you who are joining for the first time, I'll share it again, just that, when I was younger, I had gone to speak with the therapist, and my mother had taken me there. And it was, just kind of part of the physical examination that I did on a regular basis. I was in this kind of Head Start program. And when I did the first session, I was talking with her afterwards in the car about, what had happened, in my appointment with this therapist. And she just said, baby, you're not going back there, because if you go back there, you will be crazy. And that was the end of it. And so I was not, allowed to have that kind of support for my own mental wellness, because there was such a stigma
Mhm.
attached to it. And, my mother, was part of the greatest generation. She was born in 25. And so certainly, no one did that during her growing up. And even with having, two, I would say probably three bouts of depression as an adult. The first time it happened, I didn't even know to go, to a therapist at all. And then it wasn't until maybe the third time that I had about with depression that I knew to go to a therapist. And it was through the urging of my children saying that I should. And otherwise, I mean, I was dealing with, the first time was with postpartum depression. And I didn't even know what it was until someone mentioned it later. And so it was just one of those things because I had grown up feeling like you just kind of, suffer through it. And similar to what you shared at the outset with the poem around being strong, it's always just be strong, be strong. And I just didn't even know to seek out help.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we're at a better time and place and space where the
Absolutely.
stigma is being dismantled so that we can seek therapy, our children, our people in our community, because it's necessary.
It absolutely is. And it made such a difference for me once I did, just to be able to process and talk through some things that you just don't want to dump on your friends, make them your therapist, or talking with your kids about it, just being able to process it with, a professional. I think that makes, a huge difference. And there's so many that are out there, and it's interesting because one therapist that I had reached out to, this was prior to COVID, and they did teletherapy. And I just thought, even though I have been I've worked remotely for close to 30 years now. So it was no big deal for me to do it that way. But I just thought, as a therapist, I don't want to do any teletherapy. That's not. And little did we know, just less than a year later, that's the way it was being done. So yeah. Thank you, Dr. Carter. So how is it, would you say that, what is something else that you would share in terms of, your taking care of your mental health these days, that you may even share with your clients that you're working with, because you work with a lot of high achieving women leaders? What do you say to them?
One of the first strategies I always try to encourage them to do is to unapologetically make yourself a priority.
Yes.
Because we're typically making sure the family's okay, the children are okay, the project at work is done. And even the term work-life balance, I don't like that term because it sounds as though once all the work is done, then you can have a life. And you and I both know the work will never be done. So to unapologetically make yourself a priority. And for women, I highly recommend what I call a PMS weekend. And
what does that stand for?
Don't get scared, Dr. Carter. It stands for Pamper Myself.
Oh, nice.
And
nice.
The goal for me is to do it once a quarter, because Mother Nature replenishes herself 4 times a year: winter, spring, summer, and fall. So we should care enough for ourselves to just take some time away to replenish. And a PMS weekend is doing what you want to do. No disrespect to spouses or partners or children. But again, I think as women leaders, we always default to what do the others want to do. So
that is so true. That is so true. And I love that idea. I don't even think you've shared that with me before. I want to do it monthly though.
Okay. Of course.
Mother Nature may replenish every quarter, but I want to do it monthly. I love it. I love it. And I feel like I kind of do that when I travel, because I travel fairly frequently. But it's not really thinking about it in that intentional way. And
Mhm.
I think that's part of it that really makes it different than just, you having that time, but being intentional, I
Mhm.
think really makes a difference.
Yep.
So thank you for that. Thank
And
you
and
for
and
that.
I do think we have to think about how we travel because we travel a
Mhm.
lot. We travel
Yep.
for work, but traveling
Yep.
for work is not a
Mhm.
PMS weekend. It's traveling for work. So,
I'm traveling to see concerts.
well,
So
okay,
I
that
ain't
counts.
working on no weekend traveling.
That counts.
So it counts. It counts. But I want to be intentional with the pampering side of it. So I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. So I just want to thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Karen. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
And thanks to everyone else who's out there and joined. Dr. Carter, you've been amazing. So thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. And we'll be coming back next week. We're going to come back next Monday. And in the meantime, I still need to put this in the chat, but I want to invite you all to join me on my fundraising campaign this month for mental health awareness. The proceeds will be going to Crisis Text Line. They're doing a lot of amazing work, especially for our young people in supporting them with their mental health. I have so many that I know that rely on Crisis Text Line and the work that they're doing. So I'm fundraising this month. It's to raise $1,008 to support a crisis intervention specialists to be trained to do this very important work. And so I will be adding that link in the chat and really appreciate you all. I'm going to be running a half marathon in Austin, Texas. And I'm thinking like, Austin, Texas, how hot it's going to be this month. But I'm excited for it. It's Run for Mental Health. And so I am really excited to do that race. So thank you, Dr. Karen. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone, for
Dr. Pamela.
joining in. It's been amazing. So thank you all so very much. And I'll see you next week.